your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News Weekend Edition.
Hello, I'm Naveen Day. Thanks for joining us for our Week in Review. A total of 9 candidates are battling it out to see who will become the next Alberta Premier and leader of the United Conservative Party. Rebecca Schultz, the MLA for Calgary-Shaw and former Minister of Children's Services, has thrown her name into the hat, vying for the top job. Schultz was in Lethbridge on Tuesday campaigning in the city. She will be in tough against frontrunners Travis Taves, Danielle Smith, and Brian Jean. She says there are a few things that make her stand apart from the competition.
We need somebody who is focused on the future, who is a good communicator, who can explain that the reason why Conservatives care about economic growth and jobs is not because we love GDP or labor market statistics. It's in fact because we care about people, that we can make compassionate, common sense decisions. And why we want that economic growth is so that we have the resources needed to invest in things that matter to everyday Albertans, from healthcare to education to public services.
The UCP will name their new leader on October the 6th. Jason Kenney has stayed on as interim leader of the party since he announced he was leaving the position last month after only receiving just over 51% support from party members. Freedom Convoy organizer Tamara Leach has been arrested again and was taken to the Medicine Hat Remand Center on Monday night. She was arrested for allegedly breaching her bail conditions. According to her criminal defense lawyer, Eric Granger, a warrant out of Ontario was issued alleging a breach of a non-communication condition. There's speculation that she may be in trouble over a Facebook photo showing her alongside fellow Freedom Convoy organizer Tom Marazzo when she accepted her Freedom Award in Toronto on June 16th. A number of people in Medicine Hat took to the streets in front of the Remand Center on Monday night, waving Canadian flags and signs in support of Leach, demanding she be released. Her legal team says she expects to be transported back to Ottawa in the next week. Leach faces various charges, including mischief, obstructing police, and intimidation for her role in the Freedom Convoy protests that took place in downtown Ottawa earlier this year. The Sundre Pro Rodeo has apologized after photos surfaced from the event's Saturday morning parade of a float that was described as racist and politically charged. Parade officials say it joined in the procession without approval. The float was of a manure spreader marked with "The Liberal," which carried a man wearing a fake beard and a turban. Several from the Sikh community have condemned it as a racist act. A woman associated with the float said the display had absolutely nothing to do with racism, adding that it was meant as political satire. A 30-year-old woman died after being thrown from her horse at the Ponoka Stampede grounds on Sunday. RCMP say the woman was not only thrown, but then was trampled by other horses. Police say they arrived just after 7 p.m. on Sunday to assist EMS, but the injured woman succumbed to her injuries. The incident is now being investigated by Occupational Health and Safety. The deceased woman's name was not released. And Calgary has been selected to host the 2024 Special Olympics Canada Winter Games. Mayor Jody Gondek says the city is excited to share its great facilities and inclusive community spirit. The city will host around 1,300 participants for the event, along with officials, family, and friends. Tourism Calgary says it expects the games to bring around $9 million to the local economy. The Alberta government says it is investing $4 million to help kids and youth get more active. The officials say funding in partnership with Kids Sport and Alberta Recreation and Parks Association aims to make sport and recreation activities more accessible and affordable for children. Around $1.85 million will support more than 7,000 children, as Kids Sport Alberta will distribute up to $250 per child to help with registration costs for sports programs.
COVID brought many challenges for sport, physical activity, and the recreation sector. Opportunities were scaled back, interactions were limited, physical, mental, and emotional health declined, as has been documented. Kids need to be able to play, to grow, to develop well, to develop social interactions, and our government knows that the pandemic created various challenges for Alberta families across our province. So my goal here has always been and will continue to be to make lives better for Albertans across our great province, including, and maybe I should actually say, especially for youngsters.
Lethbridge, like many Canadian cities, has a homeless problem. It has gotten to the point that a tent encampment has been set up not so far from the soup kitchen. When we return, a special feature on our city's most vulnerable.
There wasn't really any place for a man to go but come to the city and live in the street. I'll go into a tent till a cop shows up, and then the cop and the city get together and they confiscate everything.
The issue is the more we take their belongings away, the more they have to seek other belongings. You need shelter.
The city of Lethbridge has been dealing with an issue of many tent encampments popping up near some downtown facilities. The city currently does not have long-term housing solutions for the most vulnerable. In this special feature, Angela Stewart spoke to some of the homeless who say they want to see city officials step up and offer more support.
Here, we're not doing so well.
Just the sweater on his back and a few belongings to call his own. Lethbridge resident John frequents this tent encampment often just outside of the soup kitchen.
So we lost our place, and we're here now.
John, along with his girlfriend, have been homeless for the last year after coming from a state of always having a home to maintain and living by their means.
We collected the CRA, and we lost our paychecks.
The couple has been sleeping in the nearby shelter, also known as Alpha House.
I get 2 mats, my girlfriend gets 3 mats, and we're just struggling to get by.
John and his girlfriend are not alone. Many others see themselves living this reality.
I had a fiance at the time, and I lost my fiance. And at the same time, we fell into drugs.
Chad, who comes from the Blood Reserve, says he fell into a deep depression after losing his mother. Battling with addiction and eventually losing his son, Chad packed his bags and came out to Lethbridge, where he's been for the last 6 months.
Actually, 6 months ago, on December 28th, I went to detox for 3 months, and I went to treatment for another 2 months. I was in the transitional living for another month. So 6 months altogether, I was sober.
Coming out of a divorce, Thomas has been homeless for the last 6 years.
I was married for 22 and a half years, and there wasn't really any place for a man to go but come to the city and live in the street.
A recent report from Stats Canada shows more than 235,000 Canadians may experience homelessness in any given year, and about 25 to 35,000 may experience homelessness on any given night.
These are all real people too. We're all real people. I find all the best people I've ever met are right here.
With no place to go, Thomas and Chad say sleeping in a tent is the best option for them right now.
I'll go into a tent till a cop shows up, and then the cop and the city get together and they confiscate everything.
Everybody here, the cops have to come and tear down everybody's stuff. Like, this is literally all they got for our homes.
The issue is the more we take their belongings away, the more they have to seek other belongings. You need shelter.
Many tents can be seen at this encampment, and Bill Ginther with the Soup Kitchen says on a number of occasions, the homeless have had their stuff taken away.
One of the things that we're doing is that we swoop in, we clean everything up, we take all their belongings, and then they're back in a few days.
This is now creating an issue for both the Soup Kitchen and Alpha House.
Ultimately, the size, the number of encampments that we're seeing outside the shelter, that's posing a safety risk, and that's why we're concerned.
It has worsened over the course of the last year or so, partially because the city made a decision to upgrade Galt Gardens where people stayed. And that wasn't an ideal situation, but neither is this.
Many say a transitional housing option would be one step in the right direction of getting on a better path.
Situation now is trying to get out of here again. It's really hard.
I would like to actually help with the transitional, like the housing.
I don't know how much funding, but there has to be transparency too as well with the funding.
But the evidence is the case that the last 2 winters we've been promised some form of transitional housing, any kind of housing. There's zero has happened.
Lethbridge currently has no transitional housing option available, and for the facilities near the encampments, they say more needs to be done.
It's a safety risk for the folks that are staying in those camps, right? They're not meant for permanent habitation, right? And we're seeing folks who, are in the middle between a number of different camps, and it's not safe for them to be staying in there.
In a response to COVID-19, the province was funding a housing option for people through Alpha House. But that isn't the case anymore. And now the facility says they want to see something more permanent.
We have heard from, multiple stakeholders that, there are funds, or that the funds are coming, or that, we do see that this is the solution, but ultimately what we need is, things to be greenlit.
These are citizens of our city. We may not like the idea, we may wish for something better, but we've got to do something. And right now, I've seen zero evidence of any activity to try to find housing.
Ginther says a permanent housing solution is vital, especially during the winter months, as the conditions can be unbearable for some.
I see too many people with amputated fingers. It's really on those decision makers who choose not to do anything.
You freeze. That's all there is to it. Is you freeze.
When we return, more from our special feature on Lethbridge's tent encampments. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, video journalist Angela Stewart spoke to some of the homeless in Lethbridge whose encampment of tents continues to grow in the downtown area. Here's part 2 of that special feature.
These are citizens of our city. We may not like the idea, we may wish for something better, but we've got to do something. And right now, I've seen zero evidence of any activity to try to find housing.
Ginther says a permanent housing solution is vital, especially during the winter months, as the conditions can be unbearable for some.
I see too many people with amputated fingers. It's really on those decision makers who choose not to do anything.
You freeze. That's all there is to it. Is you freeze.
Ginther says he has brought his concerns to the city on a number of occasions. He says he feels the issue has been swept under the rug.
And I'm saying, where should they be? And so this bothers me to the nth degree, to see people having to live almost like animals. Our city should be ashamed of ourselves. So we, as people with an education, people that have the means to make a difference, are not willing to do it.
Let's face it, we need a spot, we need space for these homeless people to be, and we're going to try to do everything we can to help those most vulnerable in our community.
So it's not a new issue to Lethbridge. Lethbridge has dealt with encampments and people facing homelessness, just like every other municipality across the country.
Mike Fox, Director of Community Services for the City of Lethbridge, says a majority of the issues in terms of finding appropriate housing falls on the province, but the city continues to work on finding solutions.
I think there's two issues. There's one with people facing homelessness, and then there's the opiate crisis. And I think there's two distinctions there that cause different issues and have different solutions. It's how do we have the right solution to help everybody out in these complex issues. As we move forward, if we can get all the stakeholders together that are doing things, there are many. And when we release the list out on what everybody's role is and what people can do on this issue, I believe people will be shocked on the complexity and also on how many people are trying to do things for the residents.
In the meantime, many who are struggling with homelessness in the community say they hope the city will act soon and provide the proper resources to help them get up on their feet once again.
In my situation, I need to be in a stable environment, which people aren't right now, and this is what it is.
We could be an example to other cities by actually doing something. Housing. Create housing. That's really all it takes. We need to restore and enhance the dignity of people. There's no dignity in living like this, none.
For Bridge City News, I'm Angela Stewart.
Thank you, Angela, for that amazing story. Switching gears over to Alberta politics now, two frontrunners in the race for the leadership of Alberta's United Conservative Party are Brian Jean and Danielle Smith. Hal Roberts spoke with our legislative reporter Tyler Dawson, who compares the two on their stance when it comes to Alberta sovereignty.
So Tyler, UCP leadership candidate Danielle Smith launched her campaign in a pretty big way. She says one of her first orders of business, should she become premier, would be to have Alberta opt out of federal laws the provincial government really doesn't like. Is this the brainchild of the Free Alberta strategy?
It is. So this was a document from maybe about a year ago now from a University of Calgary political scientist, lawyer, and former Wild Rose member of the Legislative Assembly. And they wrote this whole document, sort of part of this conversation about more Alberta autonomy, Western alienation, all that stuff that, you and I have talked about a bunch before. So this strategy detailed ways in which Alberta could sort of gain more power. And Danielle Smith has sort of adopted that, at least in part. And so this was one of the first sort of big policy platform planks, shall we say, coming from the UCP leadership candidates, and it made a bit of a splash. The question, of course, is whether or not that would do anything, whether or not Alberta could, in fact, opt out of federal legislation. And I talked to some experts when she announced this, constitutional experts and lawyers, and they said full stop that this is not really, a workable proposal, that, even if the Alberta government could say, look, this federal regulatory decision doesn't apply to the business sector, well, businesses are going to follow federal law, not what the Premier of Alberta is saying.
Now, another former Wildrose Party leader, Brian Jean, is also on the Autonomy for Albertans train. Now, he doesn't believe in a sovereign Alberta, an independent country, but instead wants to really focus on fixing our relationship with Ottawa.
So Brian Jean is very much promising a different managerial style among his caucus, very much a different tone as leader of the party and premier potentially of the province. But in terms of the importance of this sort of alienation thing, he's very much talking about that as well. So as I said a moment ago, I think this is really going to be a theme.
Coming up next, there are lots of places to get away this Canada Day long weekend. And if you're in southern Alberta, you might want to avoid the crowds in Banff and check out the picturesque Waterton. Alberta is famous for its beautiful Rocky Mountains and national parks, and one of our jewels of southern Alberta is Waterton Lakes National Park. Jeanette Roche spoke with Shamir Suleiman. He is the president of the Waterton Park Chamber of Commerce and the owner of the lovely Bayshore Inn, which is nestled right along Waterton Lake. He says the park is operating in full swing during this long weekend and is ready for a busy summer ahead. Take a look.
Well, it's a long weekend, so what does the Chamber of Commerce have planned for the town of Waterton this Canada Day long weekend? Anything special going on?
Our celebrations are actually on June 30th. We have a bike parade, we have a dinner that's open to the community and visitors alike. That's happening on the 30th. And then on the 1st is Parks Canada's big show, which is available on their website, which is the Parks Canada Waterton website. It'll just be kind of all sorts of different things and interpretive services kind of going on throughout the park.
Now, there's been some construction over the years with the building of the new visitor center, but I think that's complete now, right?
The visitor center is open for the first time, which is beautiful. I really suggest everyone come down and take a look at that. That's a huge project that finally is completed and finally open after COVID, which is amazing for everybody.
What kinds of benefits will tourists see from this new facility?
It is spectacular. There's a whole outdoor setting to it. They've built a mini Cameron Lake, a Red Rock Canyon, and then they've built a bunch of animal structures everywhere. Just a lot of information on the park and the area inside. It's really quite amazing. I wasn't expecting to be blown away like I was. But this visitor center shows off what Waterton, the surrounding area, has in a really dramatic way, which I think is going to be amazing for our tourists.
Now, in recent years, we've seen campgrounds and different facilities closed due to all the construction, like the campgrounds around Waterton. So are those open now for campers? And what else is open in Waterton right now?
So everything's open, which we're very lucky for. We had a rough spring, a lot of rainy spring, and a cold, miserable spring, but the weather's, it's nice and warm. Cameron Lake boat rentals will finally open a little late, but they're going to open very soon in the next few days. And everything else is open. Blackiston Rentals is open, Pat's is open, the cruises are open, horseback riding. The golf course is actually in amazing shape. That's one thing that I think is something that everyone locally should be excited for. It's the 100-year anniversary for the golf course, the Stanley Thompson Design Golf Course. And Lakeland Management has done an amazing job this year. The golf course is looking fantastic. It is in great shape, the best shape that I've actually ever seen it in. So we're really excited for the golf course this year.
No trip to Waterton would be complete without one of its amazing hikes, and you do have some world famous hikes there. Are all the hiking trails open once again? I know there were some issues with some of them being closed due to the big wildfire 5 years ago. How's that going?
We've turned the corner. Everything is back open and everything's actually in really, really great shape. I think it was a nice long winter. I don't think it took much damage in the spring because not a lot was open. The wildflowers actually look amazing right now because it was such a wet spring. So the wildflowers looking amazing. The trails are in amazing shape. So it's really a spectacular time to come down. Although it wasn't great for travel in the spring, but we're reaping those rewards and those benefits now with the amazing views. The landscape has greened up even more. So where there was that fire damage, it's lush and green behind it now. So you don't notice it very much at all. You would have to be in the know to realize that a big, massive fire had come through here 5 years ago.
Now, with COVID restrictions for the most part lifted, how has traffic been so far this year to the park? And where are people traveling from?
We're seeing a big influx of corporate business, conventions coming back, and the international tourism has started to flow back in. We're seeing a lot of Americans, international travel, and a lot of Albertans. So it's been a slow spring, unfortunately, and a lot of that is weather related. We had a lot of weather related cancellations, a lot of hikes you couldn't get to, and finally the weather's turned. It's finally warmed up. Everything's open, but I will say that there is availability in the park. I do know that the campgrounds were not full. All the hotels are not quite full yet. So if anyone's looking for something to do this weekend, for sure, Canada Day in Waterton is always a fun time. And the weather is supposed to be spectacular. So
when we return, we take a look at the latest local stories from our area that made headlines this week. Keep it right here. Many people around southern Alberta have noticed that the trees in their yard may be appearing to be dead. Well, according to Karen Barbie, who is a horticulturist, this was caused by warm weather in March when the trees were getting ready to bud out, followed by a cold snap in April. She says your trees may not actually be dead, so hold off on uprooting them.
Right now, we're still just saying wait. I've talked to an arborist on Monday, he was out, and they're just suggesting wait. Some of them, it seems like there's no life in them, but all of a sudden they'll start shooting out some leaves. Case in point was quite a few of the plum trees. There was nothing, and now they're starting to get leaves. So you don't want to cut too soon and see what happens. And they're even maybe suggesting that we wait until next spring.
Barbie adds that if your tree still appears to be dead after a month from now, you should have an arborist come and inspect it. A new city-run bus route will connect riders to some of Lethbridge's most beautiful tourist destinations. CultureLink will make 6 stops at different areas, and as BCN's Micah Quinn explains, this free bus tour was years in the making.
If you're thinking of a way to head to different Lethbridge tourist attractions through the comfort of a bus, then CultureLink is your answer. The bus starts at the Helen Schuler Nature Centre in the river bottom, then heads to Fort Whoop-Up, the Galt Museum and Archives, the Southern Alberta Art Gallery and Casa, and then to Nika Yuko Japanese Garden. Once those trips are completed, it will make its way back to the Galt Museum and finally complete the trip at the Helen Schuler Nature Centre. The project was in the planning stages for more than 3 years.
One of the things that we're looking forward to is engaging and interacting with those visitors on the bus, those citizens on the bus, just to really see and what they like, what they're enjoying, because that will help us and inform us what we develop in the years to come.
A total of 20 guests can board and be seated at once. A tourism ambassador from Tourism Lethbridge will also be on hand at various times to talk about the cultural attractions in our city.
We're just really excited as part of Lethbridge Transit to be partnered with this and really hoping to see everybody on the bus.
The CultureLink buses will run all week from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. until September 4th later this year. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
A sure sign that summer is going full swing this year is the presence of festivals. And last weekend in Lethbridge was quite the busy one, with both the Dragon Boat and Pride festivals taking place concurrently. The organizers were happy to gather without restrictions and with cooperative weather.
Our setup on Friday was very wet, as you can recall, and we were really quite nervous about the opening ceremonies. But the clouds parted, and the opening ceremonies and the lion dance. So we had people in attendance that came down, and after the dignitary paddle, it was just, we had another little downpour, but then that was it for the whole weekend.
The COVID-19 pandemic made us have to isolate and socially distance, and we weren't able to gather as friends and family and community, and you just can't replace that with FaceTime or online means, as best as it is.
A majority of the time, we take footwear for granted. One initiative is making sure children and youth are able to receive footwear. The Shoes for Kids campaign is entering its second year. And as BCN's Micah Quinn explains, last year the drive raised over $16,000 and 485 shoes were given out to children in Lethbridge and several Indigenous communities.
2022 marks the second year for the Shoes for Kids YQL campaign. The organization recently became a registered society and is applying for its charitable status. Mallory Chris Jansen, one of the founding members of the group, says it's amazing to see the smiling faces of children who receive the shoes.
When we were gracious and blessed to meet with families and give them a brand new pair of shoes, these children's faces lit up and said, wow, we actually get to go to school with a brand new pair of shoes.
The Lethbridge Police Service took part in the Shoe Drive campaign last year, along with RBC, the Blood Tribe Police Service, and Piikani Nation RCMP.
It's an opportunity for us to give back. We work here, we police here, but every member here is a community member, and opportunities where we can give back to the community and help the community and help those in need is a great opportunity for us. And members enjoy that.
The shoes will not only go to children and youth at the Holy Spirit Catholic School Division and the Lethbridge School Division, but also to those on the Kainai and Piikani reserves.
We also went as far as Pincher Creek, and we're able to support students in rural communities. We know that with partnership through Palliser School Division, we are also going to be able to assist children in Vulcan as well this year.
The shoe drive for this year's campaign will take place at the NMAX Center parking lot behind me from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. on August 27th. For more information on the shoe drive, you can visit Shoes for Kids YQL on Facebook.
Thank you, Micah. After the break, the race for the leadership of Alberta's United Conservative Party is getting crowded. Editor of the Western Standard, Dave Naylor, says a number of candidates are creating a platform of putting Alberta first.
A poll out this week had Danielle Smith at 24%, Brian Jean at 23%. So they're clearly the two frontrunners.